I renovated my mom's apartment, but she demanded I pay 3 times more. That's the least you can do, she scoffed. So I found another place. When she realized the buyer was my estranged aunt, she gasped. You sold it to her? I just watched their reunion explode into chaos. I don't think I ever really understood what family meant until I sold my mother's apartment right out from under her. If you're already thinking I sound like an ungrateful, heartless son, you wouldn't be the first. Trust me, I've heard it all. From her, from family friends, from the nosy church ladies she vents to every Sunday. But here's the thing. When someone spends your whole life treating you like a walking ATM, a therapist, and a handyman all rolled into one, you eventually run out of patience. I guess I should start from the beginning. My name's Brandon Calloway, and for as long as I can remember, it's just been me and my mother, Donna. My dad left when I was 4. No long-winded explanations, no teary goodbyes, just a slammed door and a missing suitcase one morning. Mom cried for about a week, then never spoke his name again. After that, she made it clear that I was her whole world. Not in a sweet, loving way, but in the you owe me your entire existence kind of way. Growing up, I learned real quick that my feelings didn't matter. If I was sick, she was sicker. If I was tired, she was exhausted. If I had a bad day, well, she had a horrific one. And if I ever dared to complain, after everything I've done for you, after all my sacrifices, that was her favorite phrase, her ultimate trump card. When I was 16, I got my first job at a grocery store, bagging groceries for minimum wage. I was so proud of that paycheck, until Mom held out her hand and said, you need to contribute to the household now. I handed it over without protest. I wanted to be a good son. By the time I was 20, I was paying most of the bills. When I moved out at 24, I thought I was finally free. But she had other ideas. She called me constantly, showing up at my apartment unannounced, sobbing about how lonely she was. And every time she needed money, she had a new excuse. Her car broke down, the utilities were too high, the landlord was raising the rent. It never ended. So when she called me one day, crying about how her apartment was falling apart, I should have known better. I should have let her handle it herself. But she knew exactly how to pull me back in. Brandon, she sniffled over the phone, I don't know what to do. The kitchen pipes are leaking, the floors are warping, and there's mold in the bathroom. I don't have the money to fix it. I sighed, already feeling that familiar guilt creeping in. What do you want me to do, Mom? You're good with this kind of thing. Maybe you can hire someone? Just some small fixes, nothing crazy. I do it myself, but you know my back. And just like that, I was roped back in. What started as small fixes turned into a full-blown renovation. I hired contractors to replace the plumbing, rip out the mold, install new flooring, and repaint the walls. The kitchen got new countertops, and the bathroom got a brand new vanity. I even replaced her old, rattling AC unit so she wouldn't freeze to death in the winter. It wasn't cheap. The final cost? $28,000. I didn't expect her to pay me back. I knew better than that, but I at least wanted her to appreciate it. When I showed her the invoice, she barely glanced at it before scoffing. That's it? I frowned. What do you mean, that's it? She shrugged, setting the paper down like it was nothing. I thought you'd do more. The bedroom could have used new windows. And what about the closet? It's tiny. I should have had a bigger one built. If you were going to fix the place up, you should have done it properly. I stared at her, my jaw tightening. Mom, I just spent 28 grand making this place livable. You said it was falling apart. Now it's good as new. She scoffed again. You should have spent at least 3 times that. After everything I've done for you, the least you could do is give me a proper home. And that was the moment I snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just took a slow breath and said, fine. You want a better place? I'll sell the apartment and find you something else. Her eyes lit up. She smirked, thinking she had one. Good. Make sure it's somewhere nice. Maybe a townhouse. I nodded, biting back every angry retort I wanted to hurl at her. Instead, I turned on my heel and walked out. But I wasn't looking for a new place for her. I was looking for a buyer. Here's where things get really interesting. My mother has an older sister, Deborah, whom she hates with a passion. I grew up hearing about how Aunt Deborah was a liar, a backstabber, a thief who had stolen money from their parents' estate after they passed. I hadn't spoken to Deborah in over a decade. But when I put the apartment on the market, guess who reached out? Yep, her. At first, I hesitated. Not because I cared about Mom's feelings, but because I wasn't sure I wanted to get involved in their drama. But then Deborah and I got to talking, and something strange happened. She treated me like a person. She asked how I was. She told me she was proud of me. She even apologized for losing touch over the years, explaining that my mother had made it clear she was not welcome in my life. And when I told her about the situation, she sighed and said, that sounds exactly like her. So I made my decision. I sold her the apartment, and I gave her a damn good deal. The day my mother found out was the closest thing I've ever seen to a nuclear explosion. She called me, her voice shrill with rage. You sold it to her? Yep. You betrayed me. I smirked. No, Mom. I just stopped letting you take advantage of me. She hung up on me. But the real show started when Deborah moved in. Mom refused to leave. She squatted in the apartment, refusing to pack her things. She thought she could intimidate Deborah into backing down. But Deborah? Oh, she was ready for war. She showed up with the legal documents proving she owned the place now. And when Mom still refused to leave, Deborah did something genius. She started redecorating. New furniture, new paint, everything, right in front of Mom. And then, she changed the locks. The day Mom came back and realized her key didn't work was the day she finally understood. She called me in a blind rage. You ruined my life. You left me homeless. I took a deep breath and said, you told me to get you a better place. I suggest you start looking. And then I hung up. The silence that followed was almost unsettling. I expected more calls, more screaming, maybe even her showing up at my door demanding I fix this. But for the first time in my life, my mother had no immediate comeback. I won't lie, it felt good. Maybe not the kind of good where you throw a victory parade, but the deep, quiet satisfaction of knowing that for once I had stood my ground. Still, I knew it wasn't over. With my mother, nothing was ever over. 2 days later, she started making the rounds. It began with the guilt-tripping voicemails. Brandon, I hope you can live with yourself, knowing what you've done. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me? I raised you alone. I sacrificed everything for you. Now I'm out on the street, abandoned by my own son. Do you even have a heart? Delete. Then came the flying monkeys. First, it was her church friend, Miss Janine, a woman who had always given me the creeps. She had this way of looking at me like she could see into my soul, and not in a good way. Brandon, she crooned over the phone, her voice sticky sweet. Your poor mother is devastated. She's always spoken so highly of you, and I just know you don't really want to leave her in this position. After all, the Bible says honor thy mother and father, doesn't it? I clench my jaw. The Bible also says not to bear false witness, but my mom lies all the time. Guess we're all picking and choosing, huh? Miss Janine gasped like I'd slapped her. Brandon Calloway, I cannot believe the way you're speaking. Next came her old friend, Margaret, who had been in and out of her life for years. You know your mom has her flaws, but she loves you, Margaret sighed, as if she were exhausted by my unreasonableness. She doesn't deserve this. You know that, don't you? I chuckled. Oh, I definitely know what she deserves, Margaret. I hung up before she could say anything else. The biggest surprise was when my cousin Leanne reached out. Now, Leanne and I weren't close. She was 10 years older than me, lived in another state, and had never really been involved in family drama. So when I saw her name pop up on my phone, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. Brandon, she said as soon as I picked up, I just have one question. What really happened? I sighed. She didn't tell you? Oh, she told me, Leanne said dryly. According to her, you tricked her, took her apartment from under her, sold it for millions, and left her homeless while you're off vacationing in the Bahamas. I snorted. Yeah, well, in reality, I renovated her place for almost 30 grand. She demanded 3 times that, so I sold it. To Deborah. Silence. Then, Leanne burst out laughing. Oh my God, she wheezed. You sold it to Deborah? Yep. She laughed so hard I thought she might choke. Brandon, I don't even think you understand how badly you just played her. I raised an eyebrow. I mean, I get that she hates Deborah, but what am I missing? Leanne took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Your mom and Deborah aren't just sisters who don't get along. They've had actual wars. The kind that involved lawsuits, screaming matches in public places, and our grandmother taking out a restraining order against your mom at one point. That made me pause. Wait, a restraining order? Oh yeah, Leanne said. Back when our grandmother was still alive, your mom tried to contest the will. She was convinced Deborah stole her inheritance, but the truth is, Grandma just didn't give her as much because she knew how irresponsible she was. Your mom lost the case, but she lost her mind in the process. I exhaled, shaking my head. None of this really surprised me, but it was different hearing it from someone else. Leanne let out a sigh. Look, I just wanted to call because I knew your mom was twisting the story. I get it now. And for what it's worth, you did the right thing. She would have drained you dry if you let her. Yeah, I muttered. I know. We said our goodbyes, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt validated. Meanwhile, at the apartment, Deborah was having the time of her life. Now, my aunt wasn't a Krell person, but she was the type to enjoy rubbing salt in the wound when someone had wronged her. And given my mother's history, she was ready to be petty. She didn't just redecorate. She made sure my mother knew about every little change. She repainted the walls a color she knew Mom hated. She bought sleek, modern furniture, completely erasing any trace of the outdated, flowery mess my mother had filled the place with. She even got a fancy espresso machine for the kitchen, one that my mother had begged me to buy her years ago, but never got. And then came the housewarming party. Oh, Deborah went all out. She invited everyone, friends, family, old neighbors. even people my mother couldn't stand. When I walked through the door that night, the place was packed. Laughter and music filled the air, and Deborah was holding court in the living room, drink in hand, regaling everyone with a story about my mother trying to claim she had spiritual ownership of the apartment. I couldn't help but grin. She spotted me and waved me over. "Brandon, my favorite nephew. I'm your only nephew." I chuckled, giving her a quick hug. She smirked. All the more reason to be my favorite. I glanced around at the transformed space. "You did a great job in here." "I know, right?" She grinned mischievously. "Oh, and just wait. There's one last thing I need to do." I raised an eyebrow. "Do I even want to know?" "Oh, you'll love it." And then she lifted her phone, turned on the speaker, and dialed my mother. My stomach clenched. "Deborah." She shushed me, holding up a finger. The phone rang once. Twice. Then my mother picked up. "What do you want?" Deborah's grin widened. "Oh, Donna," she purred. "I just had to call and tell you how wonderful the apartment looks. You really should have taken better care of it. It was such a mess when I moved in." There was a pause. Then you BTCH. I burst out laughing. And that's when I knew this was only just getting started. The moment my mother screamed through the phone, the entire room went silent for a brief second, then exploded into laughter. Even people who had no idea what was going on chuckled at Deborah's absolutely wicked grin. She tilted her head, pretending to be deeply concerned. "Oh, Donna, is that any way to speak to family? You smug little snake. You stole my apartment. My own son betrayed me." My mother's voice was shaking with fury. I stepped back, trying to suppress my grin. I probably should have told Deborah to take the high road, but honestly, my mother had spent years walking all over me. If she had to sit in some well-earned consequences for once, I wasn't going to stop it. Deborah, meanwhile, was completely unbothered. "Oh, Donna," she sighed dramatically. "I didn't steal anything. I bought it. Fair and square. You should be thanking me. I got you out of that old dump and gave you a chance at a fresh start." The sheer audacity of it must have short-circuited my mother's brain because there was a long stretch of silence on the other end of the phone. Then, "I hope you rot in that apartment." Click. Deborah let out an exaggerated sigh. "Oh well, guess she's not coming to the housewarming party." That sent the room into another round of laughter, and just like that, the tension was gone. I grabbed a drink and leaned against the counter, watching Deborah flit around the party, basking in her victory. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. Free. But I knew better than to assume it was really over. Sure enough, my mother wasn't done with me. She tried everything: guilt trips, manipulative sob stories, even threats of legal action. But she had no case. The sale had been completely legal. She had agreed to it, even if she didn't understand what was happening at the time. And when that didn't work, she tried to turn the family against me. She called every distant cousin, every old family friend, anyone who would listen. She sobbed into the phone about how I had taken everything from her and left her out on the streets. For a while, the calls and messages from relatives poured in. Some were neutral. "Brandon, what's going on?" While others were downright hostile. Aunt Marie, my mom's cousin, was the worst. "You've broken your mother's heart," she scolded when she called me out of the blue one afternoon. "She gave you everything, and you repay her by throwing her out like garbage? How dare you?" I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Marie, did she tell you I spent 28 grand renovating her place before she demanded triple that?" Silence. "She also didn't mention that she agreed to the sale, did she?" I continued. "And that she told me to get her a better place, without spending a dime of her own money?" More silence. Marie cleared her throat. "Well, that's not how she tells it." "Yeah, because she's a liar." A long sigh. Then, in much quieter voice, "She's been calling everyone, saying she has nowhere to go. But I know she's renting a place now." "She is. And she's saying Deborah tricked her?" I chuckled. "Nope. She just didn't read the fine print before demanding I sell her apartment for her." Another pause. Then, begrudgingly, "She's exhausting." I grinned. Welcome to my world. By the end of that call, Marie wasn't exactly on my side, but she wasn't on my mother's anymore either. And one by one, that's what happened with most of the family. Because as much as my mother could spin a good sob story, the truth had a funny way of coming out. And the truth was, my mother had spent years mistreating the people around her, manipulating them, using them. She had burned those bridges long before I ever sold her apartment. I had just been the last one to walk away. Weeks passed, and the dust finally started to settle. My mother stopped calling, not because she had accepted what happened, but because she finally realized I wasn't going to fix it for her. Deborah and I kept in touch. It turned out she was actually a pretty cool person. I had spent years believing my mother's version of events, but in reality, Deborah wasn't the villain. She was just someone who had gotten tired of my mother's bullshit long before I did. One night, we grabbed dinner at a quiet little steakhouse. "To new beginnings," Deborah said, raising her glass. I smirked. "And to standing up for ourselves." We clinked glasses, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for choosing myself. I didn't feel selfish. I felt free. And if my mother couldn't stand that, that was a problem, not mine.